All right, how's everybody doing this morning? All right, we are week 2. We're going to be working today on MapKit and JSON. Did everybody get a handout? Okay. So by 11:59 tonight, if you've not yet turned this in, I do need your iCloud account for the developer account. GitHub username. We will be using that this morning. So if you've not submitted it yet for week 1, we'll be using it anyway this morning when you log into your GitHub account. If you've not created it yet, it just takes a minute to do. And then week 1 replit. If you've not, I think most folks have completed that already. So next week, no face-to-face. I will be in St. Louis. I'll have a podcast posted by Friday for next Saturday session. So you don't need to, start at 7:30 next Saturday, and you can do it anytime you want to. It just has to be completed by the following Friday or by the following Saturday. So clear on that? All right, cool. Softball tournament this weekend for RBC. Doug's gone for that, and so hope they do well. I think they did. I think I've got a good chance of winning. So been pretty good this year. My sister went to won nationals when she was in college for softball, and so yeah, I think they'll do it. This will be their how many years now? 4th year, something like that. So anyway, what we're going to be doing today, at the end of the day, you'll be playing with and modifying and updating this Rockford Crime Map app. It looks like this. Basically, it uses a map kit. It uses a data source from JSON called JSON data from the Rockford government website. It updates like within the last 24 hours. You're not going to be able to see anything. So it's kind of like 24 hours. Within 24 hours and older, you can view data, and it is active data from, even though the police scanners are silent. I don't know if you've heard about that in the news. By law, the public has rights to access crime information, and so they have this open source data source that folks can access, and they put it in a whole bunch of formats. JSON's one of them we'll talk about today. And we're able to bring it into an iOS app and put pins on the map according to how many days have been selected. It's from 1 to 30, I think. It shows you how many visible crimes on the map that you're currently looking at. And then on the upper left, there's a button called Lists that shows a list of all those crimes by number, by count, the highest count at the top to the bottom. So a couple of things are being used in here. MapKit that we'll go over today, JSON, we'll go over that as well, and go to the website that we use to get the data. And JSON's real popular for developers because it's fairly easy to implement on all languages to bring in data, live data and dynamic data. And so you see a lot of reporting sites use JSON. I teach PHP, and it's really easy to take any database and convert it to a JSON page to where you can port it out to whatever use you want it to be. An example would be recently a company had, actually it was Transform Rockford, had a huge spreadsheet, like, I don't know, 100 columns wide and like 1,000 records or something. Was able to bring it into a database and create a JSON from it, and then they could take that JSON and create just a quick data grid for folks to look at. Plus, another person took that JSON and created like a spider map. If you've ever seen a spider map, it's when you click on different coordinates in a map, and then when you click on that coordinate, it blows up and shows you other connected entities to that. I don't know if you guys have seen that before, but if I have time, I'll throw it up here on the overhead. We're still working on that, but it looks cool. I don't know how useful it is, but it looks cool to see data kind of look spidery. And so I'll kind of show you that, but that's all done by JSON. So MapKit basically is iOS's API or data API for iOS developers to integrate detailed and interactive mapping capabilities in any application. It's gotten much better over the years. Google was the de facto standard, and I would say probably still is. iOS is catching up pretty good to Google Maps. One of the recent updates is including transit information, like if you're in Chicago or New York and you have subway data and bus data. When it first came out, MapKit didn't have that. Now it does. It also has walking directions, which it didn't have initially either. Traffic's now included as well. In fact, the app we look at today and play with has a traffic module in it where you actually can see congestion, live congestion on a map as you're looking at it and viewing it. So MapKit is really important for developers to utilize. One of the things we'll talk about here in a second is location with MapKit. So when you fire up the map, the user, for the first time anyway, the user has to give you rights as a developer to get their location. You can't force it, and Apple won't let you force it. So you've probably seen this on apps that you've played with, where when you first install the app, if it uses location, it should prompt you on iOS. I think Droid does the same thing now for location. You give them rights to use your location for that app. Now, location can be used while the app's running, and location can be used while your device is running. So an example would be if you have GPS that you're using on your phone on any operating system, and you have the GPS minimized or whatever for directional, it'll still keep running in the background. So that's an example. Most people aren't aware of like pictures. That's an example. Whenever you take a picture from any phone, unless you've turned it off, the location is generally turned on a phone, and then you have to physically go in and turn it off. Otherwise, when you send a picture to folks, they can bring out of that picture your geolocation of where it was located at, which you might not really care about. Most people probably don't, but I think it's something people be aware of for sure. So the core element of MapKit is, from a developer standpoint, is the framework that you work with. It's a fairly simplistic framework, nothing real complex. Now the framework itself or the class is complex, but the hooks to use it are fairly easy to implement. It's a subclass of UI view. UI view is basically we went over last week, the hello world. That's a UI view. And so it's a subclass of UI view. And so it goes underneath it in the outline of the view. It has a canvas that the map and satellite information shows up on. And you can toggle it in code on what type of code or properties, either one. You can say you want it to be a satellite map, do you want it to be a mixed map, or a normal map. Mixed would be kind of satellite, just the flat map type of look, where you can toggle between the two. And then information also may be presented on the map, like an example, geolocation, so your location coordinates of your X and Y location of where you're located at, which we'll go over and talk about what that's all about. So basically where the pin is located on the map has a certain geolocation, longitude and latitude, and those two numbers are separated by a comma, and that is coordinated on the map. So anywhere you're moving, whether you're driving or walking, it can determine exactly where you're at and located. And you've seen it, the little dot blinks as you're moving or driving, and you'll see that in the app today as well. So the displayed geographical region may be changed manually by the user by either pinching and growing the app and moving it on the device and stretching it, or it can be done programmatically like we do in this one. Initially, I have this app load the whole Rockford area region, which includes Winnebago, Boone, and some other, I think, one other counties in there. But basically, you'll see it zoomed out pretty high out to get all of the regional map of where that JSON data covers. which is basically all Winnebago County Sheriff and Police Department, Rockford Police Department. And then the user can click on the upper right corner of the app where it says me. It would actually show you exactly where you're at right now, like here at the college. And then within that 5,000 meters from where we're at, it would show the crime within ever how many days you said you wanted to view. This view here is an analytic view, which is hard to see here, but it's basically a analytics of what crimes have occurred and how many. And it's sorted by highest crime to lowest crime. Like in this one here, it's simple assault, 221 simple assaults. And I believe that was only a 3-day range from today. This is an active map. The second one, disorderly conduct, aggravated assault number 3, and other all the way down. So a whole bunch of different codes that they put in. And I won't play with more of that today. And that was just recently added for you guys this semester. I didn't have that last year, but I thought it'd be kind of cool to have analytics of the breakdown of the crime. Okay? Now, some people, when they look at this map, oh, that is real depressing, But I think it's I'm just looking at it from a sheer numbers perspective or data perspective, to be able to bring in data, active data that's good data, not bad data, and something that you can use effectively, which you could use this app effectively. Well, folks might be interested in an app like this for a number of reasons. One is they're getting ready to buy a house. They want to know what the crime is in that area, or they're getting ready to go to an event. They want to know what the crime is in that area. And so, or even where they live, want to know what the active crime is. It's hard to pinpoint. If you were to think right now, how do I find that information? Where do I go to? And most people don't know. They just don't have a clue. They watch the news and that's about it. But as you can see today, you'll find out there's a lot more stuff that goes on in the Rockford region than we're told about, which probably won't surprise you. But I think from a data perspective, it's kind of cool, I think, to just have that information available to us. It also has annotations ability in the framework, and those are little pins. Now, the pins we use for this one is just red pins, but you can color them all different. So we could technically color each pin differently for the different type of crime. There's like about, 100 codes for the different types of crime. And each pin could be different. I just have them all red, but they could be different. You can change those. So when you click on an annotation, once it's on the map, you can, as a programmer, tell what you want to show up in the bubble of that annotation. What I've used from that JSON data is the date and time of when the crime occurred. And the way the JSON data works is it gives date and time, type of crime, and that's it. Doesn't give any address or anything like that. So to save the person's identity and things like that, and the location of the owner that it occurred to, maybe the house or something. And so that, and by the way, that's by law too, that police department, when they submit public data, it has to be in a format that's kind of generic. It gives you location, but not exact address. But now it's not too hard to zoom in on that pin though and figure out exactly the house it occurred on, but it doesn't give the address, right, for you. So as a data source in JSON, I've got on the title part of the annotation, because there's two things you can work with annotation: title, subtitle. It's actually 3. You could put an object like an image in there as well. So we could put an object like a picture or that'd be a good example. Picture would be a good example of that. Street view of that location might be a good example as well. So title, subtitle, and object like an image. And so on the map view delegate, we're going to play with that a little bit this morning as well. When you guys created the Hello World last week, it had a view controller that we used for the single view application. And when you're including a map kit or any other type of module in iOS, you have to include what's called a delegate to that object in the view controller. And it's the name of that object generally with the word delegate on the end. So what that tells you or gives you as a developer is all the tools available in MapKit are now available on that view to use. One of those would be annotation. Also, one of those would be location as well. And so the protocol allows an application to receive notifications of events related to the map view, such as if I'm walking across the room here with my phone, it'll recognize it, the location will, and trigger a notification to the map kit to move the pin of myself moving in the room. Or if I'm in a car, same deal. You guys have seen that when you've used GPS, but now you'll kind of see today how that works behind the scenes in an app. Also, the region can change. Now, region, what it refers to on region, is you can tell from a pinpoint location programmatically how far out you want that map to be viewed. Like I think the initial one I have for this app is 5,000 meters from the center point that I set for a longitude and latitude. And the longitude and latitude point I used was the loop down on, I think it's downtown. If you're going down Spring Creek, yeah, going down Spring Creek, you know that the bridge you go across, and it's got the multiple loops that you can take to get on to go to Mississippi or to go to Loves Park. That's the center point for the map. And from that center point, you can, the data shows both north, south, east, and west of that center point, 5,000 meters, and what crimes have occurred in that 5,000 meter range, which that's roughly about the range that I've noticed that the pins go out around 5,000 meters. And so range or region is what I just talked about, the distance, and it's measured in meters. And it downloads the data map to the device dynamically as you're moving. It renders the satellite images or renders the map images of your streets. It also renders the traffic images of traffic flow or congestion as you're moving. That's all dynamically built in. You don't really have to program anything for that. You just have the little checkbox on a property you'll see to show that information. You can also checkbox things like pinpoint locations like restaurants, waypoints, which would be like restaurants, gas stations, stores, all that stuff would show up. Banks, churches will all show up on the map dynamically. So location, I'll talk a little bit about it. In iOS, you're able to employ a number of techniques of obtaining information of the current location. In the code, though, there are some triggers you have to put in the app in Swift for this to occur. Otherwise, it won't work. And we'll talk about that and show you how that works. But the mechanism of location includes GPS, cell tower triangulation. What that means is from wherever you're located in the world today, actually, there's three, they use the nearest 3 cell towers from your location, from your pinpoint location, whether it be a person, whether it be an airplane, a vehicle. And then finally, and least accurately, it can use your IP using available Wi-Fi. And so when Xfinity gives Rock Valley or your home an IP address, it knows when it gives you that IP address, your rough location within about 20 to 30 meters, which is pretty accurate. It's not pinpoint accurate, but 20, 30 meters is pretty accurate. It means you could find somebody. If somebody was lost or in an accident, with a triangularization of cell towers or even an IP address of a Wi-Fi signal, you could pick up a person's location within a 30 to 50 meter range. So the mechanism that's used by iOS to detect is, however, largely transparent to the developer, and the system will automatically use the most accurate solution available at any given time. So it knows what's strongest, basically. It notes in the app at the time or on your device what's the strongest available way to get location, and it uses that. So an example would be if your cellular is running low in here, it would switch to cell tower. If that's running low, it then switch to Wi-Fi. It's going to be in that order. Is what it's going to look like for. Now you might be thinking, well, if you have an iPad that doesn't have a cellular chip, it's going to switch to, in that case, it would be cellular's out of the way, so we go to Wi-Fi second on that one to figure out where you're located at. I went satellite and then Wi-Fi. So iOS 10 and iOS 8 both have a good what's called core location framework, which is the subject of what we're looking at this week. Next, we're going to look at JSON. We'll talk a little bit about that. JSON, if you're familiar with anybody familiar with JavaScript, or you've played with it or looked at it or whatever, I just got through teaching JavaScript in the spring. We created a cool little app to where you could, there's a list app basically where the students just built upon it each week. And at the end of the semester, they created multiple types of lists that could be shared. And it would, once they created a list, it would, when they hit share, it would create a bit.ly link, a short bit.ly link that they could send anybody and share that list. And they could check off on like grocery list or moving list or whatever you want, whatever they did. They did a moving list, people moving boxes and checking it off. And grocery list was a popular one that we used. But JSON is a JavaScript object notation, is what it stands for, the acronym. It's syntax for storing and exchanging data. It's text, crudely it's text and written in JavaScript object notation. When exchanging data between a browser and the server, the data can only be text. JSON is text, and we convert any JavaScript object into JSON and then send JSON to the server. You can also convert any JSON received from the server into a JavaScript object. This way we can work with the data as what's called JavaScript objects, and then with no complicated parsing and translation. So now this looks complicated, but it's not. I'll explain it to you. This is actually a JSON from the crime data we're going to look at in a second. If you look on the upper left quadrant or upper left section, it tells us where the pinpoint, I'll see where I get to the readable text. So it's type point coordinates, minus 88.988, comma 42, that's the geolocation. That's the longitude, latitude of where that crime occurred. Keeps going, I cut off some here on the right. It tells the type there, shoplifting, you can see that on the third line. The patrol area for RP10, ward coordinates, X and Y. And some of these I do not use in the app. But really most of the data takes up, let's see if I can find the starting and the ending and show you. Real quick. Again, I cut off some on the right here. Well, on the very top left, you see a left bracket. The left bracket of a JSON is always there on the beginning of a JSON file. And then you'll have a right bracket, a right brace on the end of it. And then, so the first one always is going to be, in this case, computed region. And it's this field here, computed region 627E-MET2. And you'll notice that's all the same on all these lines. And then it keeps on going here till it gets to around this line, starts getting into the coordinates of the crime. When it occurred, and it's cut off, it is what date it was occurred on. And here's the crime type, intimidation, and Ward 2. This is location of the police officer. And here's starts a new one again. So it looks like this one here, right here is where it starts, and this is the field it starts at. And so you'll see in more detail on my app when we look at it. In fact, I have an example here. So this is actually, if you look at this week's week 2, I think I have a link to the slides in there. You might have to refresh your page if you didn't see it. It's in week 2 notes, slideshow. If you guys will click on that. When you click on slideshow, it should bring you to this a slideshow page. And what we're going to do is leave it at this view and go to that slide that had the JSON URL, which is this one there. So as soon as you get to that slide, you can do a select all. You can actually do a control click on that text box and do a select all, and then a command C will copy it. So again, control click on this JSON text box, select all, or you just triple click in there, it looks like it works too. Triple click in that text box, command C, and then go to a new data tab or a new tab in your browser. And it should end up looking, once you enter it into the URL and hit enter, it should end up looking like mine a little bit on the overhead. And basically what we're looking at is, if we look at the URL, we're looking at a certain date here. In fact, it's from that date to present, so it'd be May 18th, 2017 to present day, today. And so I'll highlight where this one record, the first record is. So it's going to be from that to that right there. So that's the first record. And so this one here gives a case number, person, crime against a person. And the crimes are generally going to be person or property. Society is also one. Then it gives the occurred on date, occurred on time, and military time. Offense description. This one's 13A, aggravated assault. And so the fields that I use in the app are the date, occurred on date, I use that. Occurred on time, I use that. And offense description, I use that. The last one I use is the XY coordinates of that, which you'll notice on the first one, which happens sometimes, it's not in there. In fact, let me look here real quick. I don't think I grabbed the whole thing. Yeah, I don't think I did. So it started with case number. No, I did. 50. Yeah, some of these are not going to have all information. When it doesn't see all the information, it just doesn't use it. Like an example, the second one does have everything. What I mean by everything is the coordinates, the person, after person. Notice this first one here had this group type. Does not include the coordinates, so it would not include that one in the map. It's only going to include the one on the map that had the geolocation, which would be the second one does. So this location here, because it has it in the data, it's going to show it. So if it doesn't have it in the data, it doesn't show it. Now that could be for a number of reasons. It might be something that the police officers block out because it may be still being investigated, possibly. I don't know. There might be legal reasons why they can't share the location. I'm just guessing. And so the data is there, but you can't show it on the map. So the only data that can be used is data that has in there, the data records that have in there the coordinates. Does that make sense? And the coordinates refer to longitude and latitude of where that crime occurred. So we have geolocation. I just went over coordinates. We also have occurred on date, occurred on time, and offense description. We've got those that are going to be used in the app. And again, this was just, if we look at the date, it should actually just select the one date. Now we can select the date differently. Like say, let's change that from, it's the way the date is, it's year, month, and date. So if we change 18 to today, see if they've updated it yet. No, they're not updated yet. Let's go back one day. Let's go to 19 and see if they put anything in there that's updated yet. Nope. It was Friday. And then 18 we've already seen, so let's go 17. So the earliest we have, it looks like right now today, is the 18th. Friday has not yet went live, which I don't remember what time it is every day they update it, but it is every day, every 24 hours is updated. So anyway, weekends, as you can imagine, are busier than the weekdays. In fact, let's see here, pull up, let me find a date here. Today's the 20th, so last weekend was the 13th. So let's pull up the 13th. And so, yeah, not too bad. And yeah, but these are just isolated to the 13th only. Let's pull up the 12th, which would be Friday night. Anyway, so what you're looking at, again, is JSON. And as a developer, what we do is we just, with some code, we can suck in this JSON file and determine what fields we want to use. And then from that, use it in our app. It can be in a data grid. It can be in a map. It can be in both. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. And now we're going to look at some app time. We're going to actually start up a new app. And I'm going to, before we get into the map, I'm going to have us practice adding objects to our Hello World from last week and binding those objects. Because in an iOS app, there's two ways to bind an object. And what I mean by object is text boxes, labels, web browser, just to name three, okay, which are popular objects in any app. So when you put an object on a storyboard, you've got to bind it. And the way you can bind it in iOS is two ways. It can be bound, which is what's called an outlet, or an action. Now, here's the easiest way to remember which one is what, which is which. So outlet, if you can remember outlet is something, just remember these three letters in outlet is output. So objects that output something only, they're not going to have any interaction at all from a user, is going to be an outlet. Like an example of these are types of objects that would be outlet only, a label. Okay, that would just show information about text box, about whatever you want to put on a page. Outlet also, for the most part, let's talk about the like web browser. Okay. Now, web browser views what? What does a web browser view? No long answer. What's some things a web browser can view? Any web browser, no matter what it is. Firefox, Chrome, Safari. What types of things does web browsers view? What can you view from a web browser? What are you viewing today from a web browser? Got websites, good. What else? Can you view from the web browser? Can you bring up images in a web browser? Can you bring up PDFs, videos, all that stuff? So those are things that you push to a web browser to view. So it's an outlet as well, an outlet type object. Let's go to action. And when you're in a web browser, or when you're in an app, we'll just do like what's equivalent for a label outlet. What would we have next to it? Maybe in an app logically to next to a label. So it might be like it's called in Swift. There's a text field, and then We also have a button. So like on a text field, it could be at the top of a web browser, like on this one here. We copy and pasted in the slide number or the link I gave you for JSON in a text field, and then the user hits enter or they hit search or whatever, and it's an action, text field. But text field can also serve as not only an action, it can also serve as a outlet as well. Most likely text fields for the most part in apps are going to be an outlet, but they can be an action as well. And what I mean by that is you can type something in a text field and hit enter, and the web browser show up what you typed in that text field, which would be like, say, the URL of the website or something. Button, you've used buttons in a lot of apps. Buttons have different events. And all of these actions, by the way, will have what's called events that the outlets don't. Okay, an event would be, I'll come down here, come over this way, like a click event. Okay, a up mouse event, a down mouse event. Okay, just to name 3 events, type of events. So when you click a button, it does some, in the code, you put something in there as a developer for it to do something. For what we're talking about today, for this example, you click a button, it uses a text field in a browser app. Here's a text field, here's a browser. And so the user types in whatever website, has a little button here. They click the button, and then that button goes to that website. Shows that website on the web browser. Okay. So here we have text field. Here we have button. Here we've got a web browser module. And that's a simple web browser right there. And so, and you can create these pretty simply in iOS, pretty simple object creation. In fact, this is what we're going to do in just a second as an example to show you how all these work together. But in a developer ecosystem in Swift, remember last week we looked at the storyboard? Everything's on the storyboard. Last week I think we just renamed some labels, I think, in the hello world. That's all we did. This week, to get started, before we get into the map, we're going to show, we'll create a single view app. We'll put in a text field, web browser, and a button, and that's it. And we'll run the app. I'll have you put in a URL like www.google.com, hit go, and it should show up in your web browser. Okay? And as far as types, you'll be able to see how that works, how it's binding together. But objects, real key, can either be on a storyboard, either an outlet or an action. Otherwise, if they're not an outlet or an action, and you just throw them on there, they won't be able to be used within your app. Does that make sense? And what outlets do is it tells Swift what this object's name is and what its function is. Okay? Like an example, a label is a label. Its function is to just show data. Now that data could be, you just type it in the label like we did last week. There's no code to put in, but it's still a label. It's still technically an outlet. Now you might be thinking, do I have to make an outlet if objects on the storyboard are labels and it's never going to be programmatically controlled? Technically, no, you don't need to create an outlet of those labels. But you'll find out in just a second, in mobile apps, we generally don't use labels anymore because they take up room on your app, and we're kind of limited in space. And so what we have in objects like a text field now, you'll see in a second what's called a placeholder, where you can put in a text field, enter URL, and a little gray text shows up in the text field. So you don't need a label. Does that make sense? So most forms, you guys have probably seen this on apps where You go to fill a form out, and it doesn't have any labels. It just has a little gray text, which is a placeholder. As soon as you put your finger in that text box, the gray text goes away, and you can begin typing in your information. Today, that's pretty much how we do it with iOS development, and Android is we use placeholder. Now, text fields are still going to be used, or labels are still be used for labeling purposes, maybe a header information or some footer stuff or whatever, directional information. But generally, we've kind of gone away from using it for every single text field. We usually use placeholders today for that. Make sense? All right, so you're ready to create a quick web browser? Create your own little web browser here. All right, so fire up Xcode, if you would, for me. And we did get these updated last week, so I can't thank Deb for doing that. So we should have Xcode 8 now on our machines. So when you click on Xcode, do me a favor and go up to the Xcode menu and go to About Xcode. Let's make sure we have what version I have on the overhead, which is 8.3.2. We're now upgraded to the Sierra operating system, by the way, which is the newest Mac OS. And so anyway, so what we're going to do now is go ahead and click on the File menu. Go to New, Project, and we're going to select, like we did last week, the single view application, and click Next. And for the product name, we'll type in My Web Browser, all one word, and you can bookcase the My Web Browser, caps M, W, and B. It's fine, like mine there. Everything else should be as mine is on yours, hopefully. Should be organization name, Rock Valley College, edu.rockvalleycollege, and the bundle identifier in gray text should be edu.rockvalleycollege.mywebbrowser when you're done. The language should be default to Swift, and we will keep the device universal. We'll uncheck the unit test below, and that's what it should end up looking like. Leave that up for just a second. Look at me to make sure you're there. That way I don't go rush ahead a little bit. Okay, cool. Then go and click Next. We're going to save this to the, I believe it's desktop on mine, but I think last week, we'll do it this week again. We'll just click on Documents on the left side. Click on Documents and save it in there. So underneath Favorites, click on Documents, and then click Create. Everybody got that? Okay. For this app, we're going to have the app be, we'll have it be, we'll leave it just like this. I was going to do portrait only, but we'll leave it like this. The way it kind of, it'll move however where you have the device rendered, whether it be portrait or landscape. Okay, now let's go and click on main.storyboard. And when we click on main.storyboard, we should see what I see on the overhead. One of the things we're going to do just to save space so we can see this better is we're going to collapse the outline like we did last week, which is this icon right here. We'll collapse the outline here on the left. And the outline just shows kind of graphically or textually what's on the storyboard. It should end up looking like that. Again, that just gives us a little bit more room. Okay. And what we're going to do over here on the right side now is I want you to click on this icon here my mouse is hovered to on the overhead. So on the right side of Xcode, it's the Show the Object Library. Looks like a little target icon, like target practicing. And the very top one should be View Controller. If you see that, you're in the right place. Keep scrolling down till you see the text field object. Once you find the text field object, just click and drag it into your storyboard and put it right where mine is on the overhead. if you click and drag it and wait till the lines show up there, the center line means it's centered horizontally and vertically both. Right now, if I go up higher, you'll notice it has a little blue line. It shows underneath the battery. I generally do it like this. If you go too high, it goes above the battery. You go 2 ticks below the battery. And Apple generally likes it just like that. It's where people can still see the battery power left on their app, on their device, basically. And what we're going to do with this, we're going to make it a little bit wider. So I'm going to make just a little bit wider, not too much. And I'm going to center it again. So I'll have you do the same on yours. And then I'm going to have you bring a button into the right of that. So click it over on the right side and bring a button in. And you'll put it right to the right of that. When you bring the button in, if you look on the overhead, see how my lines are showing up? I want yours to show up the same as mine. When you click and hold it and drag it, what it's doing is it's aligning it with the text field. When you see the 3 lines like mine on the overhead, show up the little dotted lines, that means it's aligned up perfectly with that text field. And once you've done that, you can release the button. And what I'm going to do is this text field, I'm going to make it a little bit to the edge, to the left edge, until this little left line shows up. You'll see the little blue line there. So I'm going to bring it all the way to the left to where that blue line shows up. So I've got the text field and the button now all lined up, taking up pretty much the width of the phone. Now what I want you to do is click on the button for me one time, and then go over here to the property inspector that I'm hovering on the overhead, the show prop attribute inspector. Click on that, and 4 items down where it says button, I've highlighted on the overhead. I want you to type in GO, caps GO, and hit return. You're just going to replace that text button with go. And someone walk around, make sure you got that. So we just simply put in here so far, text field, a button. We've lined them up, make sure they're roughly in the right place. And when you're first doing an app, like I'm just showing you, you kind of want to do it. It just saves you time. That way, you don't have to go back and do it later on the alignment. Okay, so now we want to scroll down and find the web module, web browser module. It's called Web View. It's about 3/4 down the object slider. And it should say Web View, design embedded web content, and enables content navigation. Once you find the Web View, click and drag it into your view controller, and we're going to resize it just like this. So if you look on the overhead, if you look, your blue line should be just like mine. I've got it shoved to the left guide, right guide, bottom guide, and I have it right underneath the text field at the top, to where it gives the perfect alignment for me. Right there. Now that right line is actually lining, it should be lining up with the button, I think. The go button for right now, that's fine. As soon as it's like that, it should look roughly like mine there. So now we've got the objects on the app that we want, right? Next step is once you put the objects on there, you've then got to do what we did on the board there. We've got to create either outlets or actions. So let's go over these objects before we do it, talk about it a little bit before we actually do anything. So this text object, which one do you think it should be, an outlet or an action? No, just remember now we do have a button here because the whole logic behind this, we fire up the app, user enters in the URL here, hits go, it's going to show up on the web browser. So what should this be out of the box, an outlet or an action? And remember, actions, click, up mouse, down mouse, or in this case, up finger, down finger. What do you think? Just throwing out there, what do you think logically it could be? Outlet, correct. So this is an outlet. Button, what do you think it's going to be? Out. Yeah, it's going to be an action. And then the web browser? Outlet, exactly. So those three objects are going to be those three types. So here's what you do. And this is kind of tricky the first time, but once you do it the first time, you're great. I want everybody to select your text field. And we're getting ready now to bind the three objects. Once you select the object, here on the upper right corner of Xcode, it looks like an Olympic symbol that's about halfway done. So the two circles. When you click on the two circles, it shows what's called the Assistant Editor. Now, I'm going to stop for just a second before we do anything. What the Assistant Editor's job is supposed to do is it recognizes the view controller you're currently on, and then it lets you drag objects from that view controller into the code that that object's bound to, or that view controller bound to. Now, if you look up here, if you hover over the two circles, if you just hover over, you don't have to click on it, it should say automatic. It should say automatic on yours, right? Now, I've seen this happen on larger projects when you begin adding tons of views and you're going back and forth quickly on stuff. There might be times when you click on an object, go to this here, the Assistant Editor, and instead of saying automatic, it might possibly say manual at times. It might literally say this. You don't need to do it, but it'll say manual, and it did not recognize where that object came from. So all you do is basically you can go up to manual and select automatic. And what it should do is, you'll notice here it says at the top of this code that it's selected viewcontroller.swift. That is the page, if you look on the left side of Swift, that's the page, viewcontroller.swift, is the page bound to this view controller, this whole view controller. That class is bound to it. And you know it's bound to it as well if you go back to this icon here, click on that little yellow circle over here, where it's highlighted like mine. It has to have that little blue highlight, and that's the view controller. Now, once you select it, it's got the blue background and the yellow front. If you click on this icon here on the right side of the Swift, it says Show the Identity Inspector. The Identity Inspector will give you a class, and that class should say View Controller. And it's referring to what I just mentioned, the View Controller class on the left side of the screen here. It's referring to this one right here. Okay? Make sense? So in order to bind objects, we have to use the Assistant Editor. And here in just a second, we're going to Control-click, drag those three objects into the code. But before we do that, here's what I always do. Take your mouse and put it, and by the way, the objects have to be added after the class call. And here's the class call. Class view initialize, or view controller, UI view controller. So what I do is this, put your cursor on the end of that line, which is right after the left brace there, the bracket, and hit return about 3 or 4 times. Give you some space here. And what we're going to do is put a comment at the top of that line, that space, and it's the 2 slashes, remember. And here we're just going to put initialize objects. Initialize objects. And we're going to bring in those 3 objects, a text view, button, and web browser, and we'll do it together here. All right, so everybody got that? You got the code in there, you got the space. And what we're basically going to do is in this empty space I had you guys put is where we're going to initialize the 3 objects. So if you'll go over to the storyboard here and press and hold your control key on your keyboard, the very left control key, and then press and hold the text field and drag it into right underneath that comment, like mine on the overhead. I'm going to drag it right underneath, and you can literally just move it up and down like this just keep the control key pressed and your mouse pressed down. And whenever you release it, that's where it's going to pop up some information. So I'm going to release mine right there, and then release my mouse and control key both, and this pops up. Okay, and it tells me by default Swift wants to make this connection an outlet. But let's just look and see what we can do with this if we wanted to. We're going to make it an outlet, by the way, but we could do an action like I talked about earlier. And the thing we've not talked about is outlet collection, which is basically just a collection of different outlets together. So make sure to select outlet. It's already there. Object means you're a part of the view controller, which is what I just showed you earlier, the view controller class. For the name, let's just go ahead and type in txt URL in all caps. So txt meaning it's a text field. URL is what its purpose is, to enter a URL. The type should be UI text field. Leave it as is, and the storage should be weak. We're not going to mess with those two. So it's an outlet. We just technically all you had to do is come in here and change the name, which we just did, txt URL. Click connect, and what it's going to do is show it up now in the code, right where we just put our cursor. And it says here it's an IB outlet. It's a weak variable called txt URL, and the type of variable is a UI text field. The little exclamation point at the end of it means it's optional, meaning nothing doesn't have to be there. It's not a must. The data has to be there. Okay, and it does that for you by the way. So let's do the button now. Again, press and hold the control key. Click and drag the go button right below the outlet we just put in there. Release it. Again, by default, it's always going to be outlet. But this time, though, we're going to change this to an action, remember? So change that outlet to an action. Before we type in the name, I always do this just to make sure I do it right. Notice where it says type any. I don't like that, because what that means is this could be fired upon any button in my app on this view. I want to specify, or any object on my view, I want to specify that it's a UI button. So if I click the drop down, there's only one selection, which is UI button. Then that's the object it is. Everything else below that we keep as is. Touch up inside and sender, meaning what this means, by the way, is when you tap the button, you tap it and release it, it fires. Tap it, release it, it fires. So if you just hold a button, it doesn't fire. But if you tap it like that, what you're doing is touch up inside. And touch up means release. And inside means anywhere inside the circumference of that button. Does that make sense? All right, so for the name for this one, we're going to do BTN, just to show it's a button. And we'll put GO, because that's what we named it, BTN Go. And then click connect. Now this was a little different. What did it do different with the action that it did not do in code with the outlet? What did it give us extra in an action? Yeah, it gives you the curly braces. What that does is, it says in the curly braces, we can put code here, which we'll do in just a little bit. So we'll actually put code in between the left and right brackets there. We'll put some code there for when the user clicks the button or taps the button, something occurs. Okay, in this case, the web browser loads. Okay, next is this one here. We're going to click and drag, control click drag right underneath that. It's going to be an outlet, and I just want this to be web view, all one word, and it should end up looking like mine. So make sure, take just a second, look at mine, and make sure yours looks close to that before we go any further. Take a second to. Now, if you mess up, you can delete a line and redo it again if you want to. Not going to hurt anything. I'll show you some things that can happen in just a second once you've double checked everything. Oh, you doing? Everybody check off all right? All right, cool. So let's talk about some stuff that could happen that's wrong. Let's do this first. Go back and we're going to come away from this assistant editor here on the right and click back on the standard editor. Okay. But what I want to do is I want to take and I want you to click on the yellow view controller button again, right there. Then I want you to take your mouse and click on this arrow icon, which says show the connection inspector. It should show all the objects on our view controller from this view. Notice if I highlight, take your mouse and just highlight over those outlets, which we have right now, TXT URL, the view, which is by default done for us, then the web view, which is a web browser. If we keep scrolling down, we should have the action down there at the very bottom, which is the received action from BTN Go. And I'm just hovering over, you don't have to click on it. And the reason I show you this is after you've bound all your objects, you want to make sure that you don't have any duplicates or misnamed objects. If you have a duplicate of an object of the same type, you need to get rid of one of them or start all over again. And the way you can do that, and we won't do it right now, but you can click this little X and it'll delete that object from the reference, and then you can redo it again in the code. Now I'm going to do it on the overhead just to show you how it works. So say I messed up on something here, like a name. Say it's a name. Say I named it wrong. So if you look on the overhead, I'm going to show you here what I'm going to do. I'm going to say I named this wrong. I named it instead of text URL, I named it text whatever. And so I'm going to click this X here. I'm going to go back to the assistant editor. And notice the little circle here is not connected. It's not black. This one is, this one is, this one's not because I just deleted it from the reference. So I'm going to go in here and I'll pretend I renamed it to what it should be and control drag it back to that line of code. And you'll notice a little blue box shows up around that UI text field. What it's doing is you'll see in a second, and I'll release it, go back to, and it's right back to where it was. Make sense? So if you ever have to rename something, that's what before you rename it, disconnect it from an outlet or action, whatever one it is, go back to the assistant editor, and you can click and drag that back to the line of code. You don't have to retype everything. You just click and drag it. And you'll notice, too, it didn't pop anything back up again because it just used what we had initially done before. All it needs to know is the name. It highlighted, if you notice, the name and the type. These two is what is all highlighted. Okay? So I'm going to click back on that. Okay. Now that we've got everything connected correctly, the next thing I like to do is this. I click on one object at a time and go to the arrow that we're on right now, just to go over real quickly, not in detail at all, some of the types of events that can occur on this object. So an example, this one is an outlet, and if we scroll down, it only has one thing underneath reference outlet, and that's what it is. It's an outlet for reference. But notice the object or the types of actions it could have. It could be under sent. If it was an action, we could do did end on exit, edited changed, edited did begin, edited end. And this would be like when you enter in a text box and you start changing something, something could trigger. Like an example would be if you entered a text box and started changing it, it clears the database out and then reinitializes it. That could be an example. Touch cancel, touch down repeat, touch drag enter, touch drag exit, touch drag inside, outside, touch up inside, touch up outside, value changed. So a whole bunch of different triggers that could occur on this. Also, it could recognize gestures on a text field as well. You could swipe it left or right and it does certain things. Like for instance, you swipe right and it deletes the text. You swipe left and it adds some default text, whatever. You can do that as well. Delegates will be doing, showing you what that's all about. Delegates generally are going to be used in a text field to clear it out. So once you've entered in your text You hit go, it loads a web browser. Then we might clear out the text field, and so the user can start typing again another website if they wanted to. That would be an example. All right. Now let's click on the go button. The go button, you'll notice, in fact, all of these objects will have the same types of available methods to them. So you'll notice it has a trigger segue, the outlet selections, the send events, same. Reference outlets, reference outlet collection, except the difference is on the selection type that we've selected. Lastly, the web browser, little different creature. Web browser is an outlet, but it also has, under received actions, some default available things for uniquely to a web browser, which you'll recognize. Go back is one, go forward is one, reload is one, stop loading is one. And so there's some default ones that you could use. So we could put a button in there. We're not going to do for this one, but we could put a go back, go forward button, like a little lesser than greater than symbol, and literally tie it to that action. When we drag it into the code, we say, this is a go back, this is a go forward. And then when we click on it, it does that function for the browser. So it does save a little bit in coding for that reason. All right, so what we're going to do now is, on the left side of your Xcode environment, click on View Controller. And first thing we're going to do is all the code, basically, we're going to put, for this example, inside of the button for right now. All right, inside the button. And so what we're going to do first here is declare URL for where we're going to get our URL. Now, remember, first week one, we talked about different types of variables. We had a let variable and a var type variable. Remember, the let's a constant, the var you can change, right? Let is what we're going to use because whatever the user types in that text field is going to be the constant variable used. So type in the word let, and we're just going to use URL. You can use big lowercase, it's fine. So let space URL equals NS URL in all caps, NS URL in all caps, let parentheses, and then we're going to be using the object here for where the URL is going to be, which is txt URL dot text, right parentheses, and then hit enter. Let's see here, and it's URL. Oh, I forgot to put string in here. String, lowercase. They just changed the syntax on that. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to highlight this and bring it up on the board where you guys can see it a little bit easier. So give me a second here. I'll put it in Word, a little bit bigger text. Create a new document. Easier to see there. Blow it up. So that's what it should look like. That's the code, what it should look like right now. So, okay, we're declaring a constant, let URL equals. Now, what we're saying is, when this is done, on the right side, remember, in Swift, like a lot of languages, this is telling URL what it's going to be. It's going to be a URL, an NS URL type now. And the reason we have to use string is, it is in the text box, that is a string. And so we're converting this string to a URL. Make sense? Now, the one thing we have to be careful for, we don't have all the hooks in this one, is when we have you guys type in the URL, it needs to be a fully qualified URL, like HTTP, :/www.google.com, or for sure it's got to be www.google.com. You know, on your web browsers today, all you have to type in is google.com. This one's not that smart yet. It's a dumb web browser. But it's going to convert that, whatever you typed in the URL text box, the text URL text box, it's going to convert it to a URL and put it in that URL variable. Everybody got that? All right, we'll switch back. So after we've done that, And by the way, you'll still have a little yellow triangle. Leave it alone for right now. It will go away in just a second. It should just say URL was never used. Consider placing it with an underscore or removing it altogether. We're going to leave it there for right now. The next time we're going to do is we're going to request it as a URL. So the word let request, and I will blow this up on Word in just a second, equals, and it's NS URL request, and it's going to be URL colon, and then it's going to be the URL in lowercase, exclamation point, right parentheses. So I'm going to put that in Word for you. I can make sure there's no other changes. Add you in. List. This one URL. I'm not doing my URL list. It's already URL. And it's URL request. Let's try this one. I just updated this code on this one, so give me a second. I'll figure it out. What happened in the updated version in the last week? They changed the syntax on me on the web browser for web request. Nope. Okay, I finally got it. They changed this, switched around my ask statement. It's all right. All right, so that's the second line. On this news update, this used to be all caps, by the way, URL, before 8 version 2. Now it's all lowercase. So that happens. And what we're doing on this line is we're taking the URL. We're now getting ready to, before we open it on the browser, we're making it a request in Swift. It's saying this URL is now requested. And then the next one we'll do is a load request from the web browser from that URL request. So let me know, look at me when you get that typed in. And again, if you have a little triangle, that's correct, because we've not yet used the request URL variable. It's not been used. In fact, you should be getting something like request is not being used. You want to put an underscore or delete it, I think, something like that. Is everybody ready for the next one? All right. Okay, the next one we're going to do is basically the name of the web browser, which was WebView. So type in WebView. Mine was all lowercase. Dot, and it's going to be load request. And it's lowercase L, uppercase R, load request, left parentheses. And it's going to be request as URL request. Right parentheses. And it's got an exclamation point. No, not that. I'll highlight that, put it on the overhead. So that's the third line. We're taking the web browser, loading that request as a URL request. And what this should do when we run the app in a second is it should run it within that web browser, whatever we've typed in that text URL area. So 3 lines of code. First line, to clear the URL from the text box. Second line, take that URL and make a URL request. Third line, load that request in a web browser and launch it is the options. All right, everybody got that? Now let's do this before we run it. We need to do this. Go back to the main.storyboard on the left. Click on the yellow circle till it's highlighted like mine. And just like we did last week, we're going to resize everything to make sure everything looks good, regardless of where it's rendered. So we'll go up to the editor menu. You'll go to resolve auto layout issues and then reset to suggested constraints. And I'll leave mine on there like that so you'll see it. You need to do this, by the way, initially when you throw your objects on a view controller. Because what it's going to do is, regardless if it's portrait or landscape, it should render it correctly. All right, regardless of what the device is. So it could be an iPhone 7s, which is a larger screen than an iPhone 7, or iPhone 6, 6s, 4, 4s, so on and so forth. It'll render it properly with that auto layout. Make sense? So do the auto layout, reset to suggested constraints. Then you're ready to do a Command R on your keyboard, and it's going to render it. Mine was a 7 Plus. I think that might be what you guys had on yours too as well, maybe. As soon as it loads up, we did not do the placeholder in this one. We'll have to go back and do that. Oh, I know one other thing we didn't do. I did not have you put the security in there for the info list. We'll have to do that too. All right, so if you type something in here right now, it's going to error out probably. So I'm going to put in here fully qualified domain. Go. It's not going to load because we've not added security to that. Try in the www. Let me get my security in here, and then I'll put it in Word so you guys can see it. I know it's hard to see it in my code up here. We got to put security wrapper in here to make sure we can launch it. iOS has to have that now. It's called NS App Transport Security is what it's called. And I will show you how to do this after I type mine in. They just added this about 2 versions ago. And if you don't add it in, any web browser type app will not show for security purposes until you put this transporter security in here. Make sure that's it before I have to give you guys to do it. Make sure it works now. Oh, it did. All right. Here's what you got to do. If you look on the left side of, we'll go ahead and stop the Xcode if it's running. Go ahead and stop it first, and that stop button. You want to right-click on the info.plist, control-click. We'll right-click that in Mac, and you want to go to Open as source code. So control-click info.plist, Open as source code, and all the way at the bottom is where you're going to put in right above. You're getting ready to type this in, by the way, right above the last DICT tag is where we're going to type this in, right above it. So I'll put it up on the overhead in Word where you can see it better. So that's what you're going to type in right there. It's an NS App Transport Security. create a dictionary saying NS allows arbitrary loads, meaning anything we type in there, it'll load up. Yeah. Control click right there on that file. Control click on info.plist. Yep. Open as source control. Then scroll down right above, put your cursor, yeah, right there is fine, and hit enter a few times. And you're going to type in what's there, starting with the word key, all the way to the end DICT tag. And what this does basically is, again, tells Swift that you can load anything basically in that web browser that you want to as a developer. So it can be an image, video, PDF, in this case, web page. Once you type that in and run it, you should be able to load a web browser successfully. Now, if you have a huge screen on your simulator, you can go up to the window menu and zoom it out a little bit. It's too big. Zoom it down to maybe 30% or something like that. Cool. There you go. And then once you load one successfully, see if you can load multiple websites. You would have to go back into the text URL and change it, but you should be able to do that. See how everybody's doing. I'm just kind of walking around, see how we're doing. And you basically just created your own very crude web browser. Keep adding stuff to it. In fact, I do have a web browser tutorial that I may put in this week, you guys, if you want to play with it some more and add more stuff to it that I put together, that'd be fine. Like a back button, forward button. You don't have to type in the forward qualifying or something, whatever. So how are we doing? And then checkbox just a fit. Should be. If you need help, let me know. I can anybody help you. Okay. Okay. Do this for me. Go back to this here. Do control click there. Open that as source code. Put on changes. Okay. DICT. So that should work hopefully. Take a second. Okay, so you still need after true, the NDICT tag. Yep. That should do it. Make sure when you're typing in the URL in the text field, it's a fully qualified, so you have to type in the HTTP // whatever, google.com. And then click the go button, it should load. It will take a second the first time to load the web browser. Then after that, it should go pretty quick. I'll just kind of wait to make sure everybody gets that, and then we'll make a few changes to the web browser to make things load a little bit better than normal. So you're ready to play yours. Okay. So let's go back to your folder here. Control click on info list and open the source and let's see. Key, you have passive key, which is key singular. Let's try that.
Get build fail. Build fail.
Bill Phil, okay, I'll be right there. Okay, you want to control click. Oh, let's look at your code here. Okay, after true, you need an end DICT. So I'll have that. Make sure you put a /. Yep. Wait to make sure it works before I go over. Just do a command all and play it. And then that little red should go away, hopefully. Yep, good. Cool. All right. You get in there, it's generally probably gonna be syntax and the feed list somewhere. What's the years? Okay, go click on the red icon, it'll tell you where it's from. Which is sick. Okay, so let's go to your info feed list like you did before. So folder, and control click on info feed list. There it is. Okay, so let's look here what you just added. I'll be missing something. Missing the true statement after key. Second key. That's put the true in there. Nope. Yeah, it's an open and close altogether. It's the same. Open and close one. And the command R, so that goes away. All right, cool. Here's working. Let's see. Just misspelled true. TRU.
I was right at this.
Oh yeah. You might have been able to. Apple wants us to do this now, so. And as soon as you load it, you should be able to go to a web page. Yep. Did you log in with this login when you came in? That's why you're getting that. So you can log in with that right there on the overhead. Make sure you guys come in, you log in with this login, the CIS290 bootcamp. Otherwise, you will get an admin prompt. That should be good. Okay. And rerun it again. Type in the HTTP :2// Google.com is fine. Click the go button. Takes a second the first time. There we go. Anyone else need help getting loaded on your web browser? Okay, so let me show you something here. If you go back to Xcode, you might have noticed some of your web pages weren't rendering right. It might have been like too big or something for the device. One of the things you can do is if you go back to the storyboard and click on the web browser module, and then go over here to the inspector, which is a little down arrow, and check where it says scale pages to fit. Scale pages to fit will then render those websites for your device. So again, I clicked on the web browser module or object in the view controller. Then I clicked on the show inspector, attribute inspector, and then just check scale pages to fit. You'll also notice while we're in here, you can detect things as well. Like by default, phone numbers is always checked, but you could also have the user detect links, addresses, calendar events, shipping tracking number from UPS, FedEx, and USPS, flight numbers, and looking up suggestions. But we're not going to play with those, but we'll leave it as it is. So scale pages to fit, once you check that, you can do a Command R again, and your pages you've been viewing should render for mobile better. It'll fit it and shrink it for the mobile device, hopefully better for you than it was before. Some sites already do that automatically, but some don't. This will force it to render properly for that device, whether it be a phone or a tablet, either one. So from this little exercise, and I'm still loading mine on yours maybe, we learned how to bind objects, outlets, and actions. We also learned how to use those objects within a simple app like a web browser to be able to load that in a browser URL. So we created a TXT, a text field object, a button object, and a web browser object, those 3 items. Now what you just learned there, the reason I wanted to show you that before we went into the map app, is the map app's also going to have some outlets and actions that you'll be doing. So that's pretty rudimentary, pretty fundamental to understanding, is being able to do that. Does anybody need help before we go on getting it working? Do what else?
Still doesn't work.
Still doesn't work. Type in the qualified domain, colon, 2 forward slashes, and then google.com. Click go. Oh, you got a breakpoint there as well. You got a breakpoint. So click on that line there, control click on it, and delete break. Control click. Just click that. Leave control down. Just click on it. Do me a favor. Press the control key for me. Let me see your mouse. See. Control. That's already running. I think if you hit cancel, back here to the simulator, and now we'll go. Oh, I know what it is. Go back to let's go to the debug menu. See? It's already open. There you go. You just have to break point. Okay. Let me show you how to do it. Let me show you what just happened, because it could happen to anybody. In Xcode, like a lot of languages, you can put what's called breakpoints in the code to stop it, to see what's happening. Let me show you how that works. So I'll go ahead and put one actually on this this line here. I think that's where yours was, on this let request line. And if you can do that, you guys can do this with me. If you go to the viewcontroller.swift and go to that line of code that says let request, if you click on the gray column to the left of the code until it's dark blue like mine, that means it has been a breakpoint's been put there. Now, if I do a control click on that blue notice I can delete that breakpoint. Okay, so I'm going to add it again. Now I'm going to run it, and I'll have you run yours if you want to, or you can just watch me. What's going to happen is when it gets to that line of code, it's going to stop, right, in rendering and go right to the code where I can see what's going on, which I'm going to go ahead and type in a URL up here, just like we've been doing. Okay, so it stopped on that line of code, and I can see that what's been going on so far. So my URL now has http://google.com. This one here is not yet fired yet. So what I can do is I can go up here to the debug menu, and I can do what's called a step over, or it's actually the F6 as well. And you'll notice it just stepped to the next line, and now I can see the request, which is a bunch of gobbledygook here on the I. Here it tells me the URL request. I could literally just hit F6 on the keyboard, it'll keep going. Got the load request. It'll go to the line of code. As it's rendered, it's just going line by line as it's loading that web page. And then I can finally just go debug, continue. And that web browser should show up. The web page should show up. So breaking line of code is popular. Putting a break line is for that very purpose, to see what's going on in that code. So if that happens, he accidentally clicked on it and it put a breakpoint. And so again, just by control clicking that line, you can delete that breakpoint as well. Make sense? All right. And again, breakpoints are used for debugging and figuring out what's going on in an app while it's running. Make sense? I'm glad you brought that up. So don't feel bad. It's a good learning lesson. So anyway, let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and have you do a file, save, and then Xcode, quit Xcode. And simulator, let's just minimize it because we'll be using that again in a second. All right. Now let me go to week 2 notes we went over. We went over the JSON. The bottom of week 2 notes is basically just some resources to help you on app creation. When you click next, it's a tutorial. Let's do this. It's 9:45 roughly. You guys want to take 10 and come back in 10, and we'll finish up the tutorial together. So go ahead and take 10 minutes. We'll come back at 5 till, and we'll start the tutorial on the map kit, which will basically be using your GitHub repo for the first time and showing you how to do what's called a fork and clone, and start your tutorial for the map. All right. So back in 10. Good job, by the way. What else? Yeah, it'll tell you exactly down here what's going on. Let's see. Right there it says value after. Yep, it put something in there. Now go ahead and run it again. Hit the run button. There must be some other ones that are missing. Oh, this here, str phone number, can't have any dashes in it. It's an integer. Now run that. Year of birth says is wrong. Use of unresolved year of birth. Where's that at? str year of birth. And just says year of birth. Oh, this needs to be str year of birth. It says year of birth. And the same here, current year, str current year. So that's what, yeah, if you miss, yeah, if you don't have that, it won't work. So let's try that and see which are the layers you got so far. They did. So nothing's been showed yet. Cool. And then just follow the directions there on the rest of it, where it's, you know. Let's see here. STR year of birth. Did you mean STR year? Oh, you misspelled it. There we go. Awesome. you the iPad last week, Richard? 2 or 3? You said you did not have an iOS class. After our next session, after the session ends, 11, I've got up here. You and who else was it? I thought there was one other person. No, did not have an iOS class. Right, cool. I've got 3 up here if you need one. So, all right. So what we're going to show first is what we're going to end up doing today. Like end result, I'll show you. I'll do a little demo of the app on the overhead, and then we'll walk you through how to create the app, a simple map app, tie in the JSON, and then have it load in the app. We'll do that in class together. You'll basically redo it again on your own between now and next week, just to reiterate those steps again. Everything we're doing today, by the way, is also in the binder I gave you. In fact, let's look at that real quick before we get into the demo, into the code. If you flip in your binder to the crime map page, so crime map page should look like this at the top end. I'll kind of zoom it out to where you can see it better. Let's do a view. Okay, so the open data, or the crime map uses open data from Rockford City Government, crime map facts that we looked at earlier, that JSON URL of the Rockford region. It's data viewed on the map kit using annotations. In addition, the app allows the user to use a slider object and show crimes from X days until current date. In addition, the user can view a list of crimes within the count, and then finally, user can tap the Me button and see crime within 5,000 meters of their region. Concepts is MapKit and JSON. There's a link to the iOS course GitHub repo that we'll look at in a second. Here's a screenshot of the app. So the left one is actually on your sheet is the initial view of the app, what it looks like. One on the right is the view of the list. And then the slider at the bottom on the left determines how many days back. All right, so let me show you a demo here. Fire it up on the overhead. Okay, so by default, this thing's going to be like last 24 hours, or actually 1 day ago. In fact, this one is, since this morning, it's updated. We now can get data of the 19th, by the way. I don't think this one, when we looked at JSON earlier, 19 wasn't available, was it? I think it was. So anyway, it's now available. You'll see 28 crimes posted. This one here, I just happened to hover over, caught under influence. That's a good one. Okay. It happened at 3 o'clock this morning, it looks like. So just a few hours before you guys got here. And each time you hover or click on one of these or tap one of these, it gives, again, what happened, what type of crime, what time. If I click on list, it then breaks it down. And let me bring this up a little bit bigger. The scale's hard to see. Make it a little bit bigger. Oh yeah, that's better. Okay, so as you can see, it breaks it down by, on the analytics, the top number, the most is at the top, least at the bottom. So you have simple assault 6, destruction, damage, property 6, burglary, breaking and entry 5, driving under influence 3, aggravated assault 2, false pretenses, swindling 1, shoplifting 1, all other larceny 1, intimidation 1, and liquor law violation 1. So a little bit of everything last night in the city of Rockford. And so this is latest data. And again, a lot of people, I've showed this to some faculty, like, oh, that's depressing. I'm like, well, I guess you can look at it that way. I look at it from purely as data standpoint. I think it's pretty cool. You can see data that quickly, and it's actual real data of our region. I think that's pretty cool. So anyway, and then I'll go ahead and I'll show you the slider, the way it works. As I move the slider, it'll tell me what it's showing is not all of the crimes here, just the visible crimes within the map that you're clicked on. So if I zone in on one of these areas and just double click the map to come in, you'll see that number dwindle down exponentially as I move in. And it's not perfect number because there might be some tab or some pins on the side here that I can't physically see. So I'll just zone in on one here, and this one here, just randomly choose it, was larceny at almost 3 o'clock this morning. And for some, there's some on the outer side, and you'll notice also I still see a full analytics of everything up to the days I had selected, which was 4 days. So within 4 days, last 4 days, there was this many crimes. I'll bring it up again so you can see it better. So this just last 4 days, right there. A few new ones in there from the first one. Looks like we've got in there drug narcotics violation. Was on the first one. Trespass of real property. What is there another one for trespass of fake property? I don't know. Weapon violations. I don't think that was on line. Credit card automatic teller fraud was on in the first one. And go back to and then if I take the slider all the way to 30 days, it'll show, again, only 3 crimes in this region here. But if I go back to restart it. I have this browser on the. Let's restart the thing. Let's see here. Let me rerun it. And then I'm going to simulate. One of the things limited on simulator for maps is you don't have GPS available, you don't have cellular available, so you have to simulate your location. I hard coded it in for our purposes, but when you put it on an iOS device, which I'll show you in a second, you can see a little bit better quality of how it works. So I will do that. I will show it on my phone. We actually get to see the real thing in action. Well, simulated there. Okay, so 1,306 visible crimes in that region, in the Rockville region. And then there's a breakdown of the analytics. Top, destruction of property, 260. Simple assault. Oh, number 2 now, so number 1. Disorderly conduct, number 3. So on and so forth. All the analytics. Now, if I do me here, it's going to zoom into where I'm at right now, which is Rock Valley, at a 5,000 meter range from the spot I'm at right now. And the reason I did that is I wanted to have a more global view of where I'm at or where I live, and this gives me that. And so again, I can zoom in to those areas, to us uniquely right here, and see that there's 2 visible crimes here that we can tap on. Burglary, breaking and entering on 5/16 at 3 in the morning. And let's see where else we can find one here. Right there, it's the second one. Destruction of property on 4/27. So not a lot of crime around here, right around this area, which is not bad. And that's actually within the last 30 days. So pretty low crime in this region here, which makes sense because you have 24-hour security on campus here. What surprises me is that one there, this one here, which is literally right across the entrance of Rock Valley. In fact, now see the pinpoint shows on the RVC side of things. So technically it could have been, I don't know, could have been the Springbrook house, which is our house here, where it was located at possibly. Don't know. Again, they don't give an exact address, like I told you earlier. It's for purpose, for a reason for that. So it could be any of these houses actually within that. So again, you can zoom in, zoom out, and you'll notice as I zoom out further, the pins are only going to stay in that one area. And it is a Winnebago area, Winnebago County area, where I told you it's going to be. And you can't make sense of it at this view, but it does give a good global view of how many's out there. All right, so that's what we'll be doing. So let me disconnect that. And if you guys have an iOS, even those who don't, before you leave today, we're going to port your this app on your device to where you go home, you see how much crime's around your house. It's like, woo, I'm excited about that. I like to know what's going on. I like to know what crime's around my house, right? I don't know about you guys. All right, so let me zoom in out that. Okay, so let me move this out of the way. Make sure this did not stop. Sometimes when I switch screens, it stops recording. Okay, we're still going. All right, good. All right. So on the Word document, it's actually, I went over page 1 with you, page 2, which looks, this one right here. We create a single view application. We're gonna do that, and we're gonna call it Crime Map. But before we do all of that, what I'm gonna have you guys do, did everybody have your GitHub account set up? All right, cool. So here's what you're gonna do. Use Chrome, that's the best one to use. If you'll go to click on your Chrome web browser, if you already have it launched for Eagle, that's fine. Let's create a new tab and go to github.com and log in with your account. So we're going to have to log in to the web module of GitHub. Then we'll log in to the Mac app called GitHub. And then we're going to go to the what's called repository for the crime map on iOS course on GitHub. I'll have you fork it onto your GitHub, which is basically like if you and I went out to lunch and I put my fork in your plate and grabbed what you had, put it on mine. You're basically grabbing my repo and putting it, copying it to your area, to your GitHub area. Then we'll do what's called a clone. We'll clone that repo down to the Mac, open it up, and you'll be able to run it just like I showed you on the overhead in Xcode. So we'll look at the finished version that way and make some modifications and changes and stuff and play with it. All right, so everybody logged into GitHub? Anybody still logging in? I want to make sure I'm not rushing it here too much. As soon as you've logged into GitHub, look at me, so let me know, and we'll know you're there, and we'll go on. As you can see, well, those of you still are logged in, if you look on the overhead, these are all my GitHub accounts. I got a few of them you can see. The one we use for this class and my fall iOS class is iOS course. iOS course has 194 repositories in it. And so it's basically just this course, my fall course, some apps I've done for campus, all in this repo. My personal one is this one here. I've got 114. That one. Then I have one for a company in town called Aqua Aerobic that I've got. I'll show you here while some of you still logging in here. I use this for a place here in town. We use it for debugging. GitHub is used to debug a project I'm working on for them. And as you can see here, these are issues that are open and active. But what's cool is with GitHub, you can not only save your code, is what the purpose of it is, source control, is to save your source of your code. You can also do reporting and debugging and testing for users. So this is a live project. We've got 5 items ready for folks to test, 5 I'm working on, 4 on hold, and 23 close items that they've done all within GitHub. And so GitHub can be used not only for source control, like we're using it for this course, it can also be used for testing and debugging apps before they're published. So now what I need you to do, once you've logged into GitHub, is go to the GitHub app on the Mac. It looks like that guy right there to the right of Xcode. Click on GitHub Desktop. As soon as GitHub Desktop opens up, we need to go to the GitHub Desktop menu, go to Preferences. If you get a prompt like this, by the way, just type in the bootcamp password. Just bootcamp. And GitHub Desktop Preferences is where we want to go to. Accounts, and you'll need to log in here with your GitHub repo information, your GitHub account information. It should work for either your username or email, either one. I always just use my username, but it should work with email as well. As soon as you're logged in, you should see your icon. That's your icon. That's mine. And you can create your own icon later if you haven't already done so and upload it there to GitHub. They have Google has it's actually a global avatar that I use for all my accounts called Gravatar is what it's called. If you just Google Gravatar, it is a place where you can set up a profile and can be used across multiple accounts. I'll write it on the board. Gravatar, I believe is how it's spelled. Gravatar is a kind of a global profile that you can use to use multiple different accounts. All right. So once we've logged into both, we can click the little X on that window once you make sure you're logged in. Now we're going to go back to Chrome. And I want you to put in your URL to the right of github.com, iOS course. And I'll come around and help you. It should be github.com, iOS course, and just leave it there. You need to go to GitHub Desktop Preferences. And then click on that, and then go to Accounts, log in. And github.com iOS course, again, is where we put I put all the code, source control for our class. You'll notice the languages show the types of code that are in here. I've got Objective C, which was the first language iOS came out with. Swift is what we're using now. JavaScript, I teach JavaScript as well. CSS, and also C++ is in there as well. So GitHub can be used for any language, really. So everybody logged in to github.com iOS course. And if you scroll down, you'll see in there crime map. If you'll click on crime map, the link, it should look like this on the overhead. And one of the things I want to go over before we do the fork and clone is kind of the makeup of this screen here in GitHub. So the way it works is GitHub is you've got you could have multiple people working on this project, right? And each person in here could be working on a separate part of it and be making what's called commits to the project, all right? Now, if you'll click on the 32 commits that are in there right now, it'll show you since the beginning of this project, if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, this project started May 29, 2016, and has been updated as Swift has been updated and things of that nature. This course started coming. I started editing it May 15th. Last time before that was July 7th. And so sometimes I will put a description of what I've done. Sometimes I won't. If it's something real trivial, like just updating code from new versions, I generally won't put anything. But if I'm updating text or information, like what we're going to be using today, I'll put a little description in there so I kind of know what it was I did. But one of the cool things is I can actually look at the code that I've got. I'll go back. Not that one. So the middle one actually shows me basically two changes were made. Two changes to these files were made on that check-in, which was a Word document and a PDF. Before we go down to actual file here that we're going to be going at in a second. Let's see here. Let's do this one here. There you go. So here's one I'll show you. This one here had 89 additions and 89 deletions to this one. Now what's cool is it shows you what it did look like and what it does look like now in this version. So the green shows text that was updated. The red is text that was deleted or updated. And so as you can see on the left, there's some stuff deleted, stuff added on the right when I move some code around for the most part. And the reason that's important is as a developer, if I mess up on anything, what I can do in GitHub is I can restore back to any check set or submittal that I've done in the past. Yes, you have a question? Then we'll let you what? I would use your username instead of your email. Your GitHub username. Did you log online with it and it worked fine? Okay, let me look at, go to Chrome, I'm sorry. Go to Chrome, what's the username? Okay, so go back to GitHub and let's close out GitHub and reopen it. Yeah. Sometimes on GitHub, you guys might have to close and reopen it on the Macs in here for some reason. I'm just user. Make sure you put in the username and password for CIS290, and it's boot camp. All right, now go ahead and log in. Try it again. hit reopen. Do me a favor and click on your Wi-Fi. See if that helps. Turn on. Let's go to RBC. You need to log in with your S number and password. Let's try that. Wait for it to connect, and yeah, you continue. That's your S number. I'll put your S number, your password for your S number. So. Oh, go ahead and put your S number and password in there. Wait for it to connect before we try to get up again. I don't know. Maybe it's some. No, we just finished up your admission stuff. There might be some stuff there. So. Okay, good. All right, so now let's exit out of GitHub and reopen it again. Go to GitHub desktop to the left. Yeah, put it and then reopen it. So, you got to type in CIS290. CIS290. Okay. You might have to effectively do one with CIS290. Worst case, might have to log off. CIS290. Yeah. That's what you're probably going to do. So I would say log off in the Mac as you and log back in as the CIS290 user. Let's do that. Yep. And I'll come back and help you caught up. Let's just go do that. All right. So here's what we want to do. In the web browser here for Crime Map, make sure you click on Crime Map, and it looks just like mine. On the right, there's a clone or download. And then also above, there's a fork. I need everybody to click the fork icon. When you click the fork icon, you'll have an option to put it to your account. So click on your account, or it should automatically go there. I have multiple accounts. For yours, it'll probably just automatically go there. It'll fork it and eventually go to this page, which will be your username / crime map. Is that right? So what this means is this is now yours, and you can do whatever you want to with it. It's now your project. You forked it onto your plate for you to use. So for us to change it, all we have to do is hit this clone or download. So go ahead and click the clone or download button and then select open in desktop. And then you'll get this prompt. Do you want to open in desktop? Yeah, I want to open desktop. What it's going to do is it's going to start up GitHub, which it already is. It'll say where to put it at. It should say documents. That's fine. We can keep it there. And then just click clone. It's going to download all that code to the local Mac, and it should end up looking like this on GitHub when you're done. Let me come by and make sure you guys got that. Okay, awesome. Now here's what you want to do. You'll control click on crime map on the left. Control click and open in Finder. And then on the right side here, to open up Xcode, it's always, the project file always ends in .xcode proj. So just double click on that crime map .xcode proj file. Double click on it. It's going to open it up in Xcode. As soon as it loads all the way, you can do a Command R and run it. Okay. Let's see if you can log into GitHub now. Mac, before we go to the web. And as soon as you run the app, you can go and play with it for a little bit before we start the in-class tutorial. Did you just set up the GitHub account, or has that been there for a while? Let me try mine, just to see if it's an account. Okay, so mine is what I am. So try yours again. If that doesn't work, we'll try your email. Just make sure this doesn't work. Okay. So let's make sure to use your email that you use for GitHub. You use the S number. And when the app runs, it will be pretty big on your screen. Maybe you might have to go to Window and zoom it down, possibly. Okay, what we're gonna do a little different on yours. Because we can't get in there, just go ahead and hit X. Go to github.com, log in. You'll fork it, but instead of cloning, I'm just gonna be downloading it to your Mac. So we'll log in. For kicks, if you want to, you can find where your house is and see what the crime is around it. Oh, you have to verify your email. That's why I wouldn't let you log in earlier. That's why. Yep. That's it. It should have sent it to your RBC email. Won't be on the email, it'll be on RBC. That's why I wouldn't let you in the desktop. Okay, you don't need to log in. I don't believe. Did it say you verified it? Go ahead and refresh your web browser here. See if it goes away. Yeah, you might have to. No, just go to the top menu, past github.com, / iOS course. So at the end of .com and a /. Right there, you go, / iOS course. Okay, click on Crime Map, then click on Fork. While that's doing it, go back to GitHub here, or yeah, GitHub. Might see if you can log in. Should be able to. It should be fine. Yes. Go ahead and sign out. That's weird. It's you though, right? Go ahead and sign in. Yeah, do it again. Go to your username. Go ahead and exit out. GitHub. GitHub desktop. Okay. All right. Okay, so go back to github.com where you were on my on your account. Yeah, stay right there. Okay, everybody else is there too. All right, cool. Then what you will do is you need to do a clone and download. Click on Open in Desktop. Did you log into GitHub? Get the desktop. There we go. Click clone. And then as soon as you click clone, you'll need to control click on Crime Map. Yep. Open in Finder. And then you'll double click on the crimemap.xcode project. It gives you a warning prompt to hit open. All right, you're ready. You can do a command on. Good to go. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. If you look at your Word document, or your handout actually be easier. For time's sake, here's what we're going to do. I've given you the code. We're going to do some copying and pasting and stuff, but I want to go over the code as we do it though. So do you get a chance to run the app and play with it a little bit? Cool. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep the app here that you have in front of you, the one that I had you run. And what we're going to do is create a brand new project and bring in basically some code from the project we have now. And so basically you're duplicating the application, and what you'll learn from it, one of the big things you'll learn is object binding for sure, outlets and actions, you'll have to do that. And we'll go over each section as we go through it. Make sense? All right, so let's do this. Go ahead and go to the File menu, New, Project. And it's going to be a single view app like it says in your binder. Single view application, click Next. And for the product name, just to separate it, let's call this one Crime Map 2. The one I had you clone was Crime Map, I believe. So we'll do Crime Map 2 just to be different. Everything else we'll keep as is. You'll notice everything's unchecked because it's an existing project we did earlier. Then click Next. We'll save it in Documents. That's fine. It should already be there, I think, from last time. And just click Create. And you can flip your page. And notice it says we're going to click on Main Storyboard and hide the document outline like we always do to get started. So it'll end up like this. and I'm on the page that says at the top of it, number 2, set device orientation to portrait. So I'm actually on this page here on the overhead. That's a page you should be on. Set device orientation to portrait, select main storyboard, then hide the document layout. So if I will do this for me, one thing we did set the device to portrait. If you'll click on Crime Map 2 over here in your left side of Xcode, we're going to go down here and uncheck everything but portrait on device orientation. So where my mouse is hovering on the overhead, you'll need to go to Xcode and just uncheck everything but portrait. And how I got here was I just clicked on the left side on the screen on Xcode, the name Crime Map 2, and then went down. And what this means is this is only going to run in portrait mode. That's all it means. Make sense? Then you can click back on main.storyboard once you've done that. Well, now on the next page where it says number 6, click on viewcontroller.swift, add imports to top of viewcontroller. So do what it says. I'll click on viewcontroller.swift, and right at the top, underneath, we'll do it right underneath the UI kit. We'll type those 2 import statements: import map kit and import foundation. Okay, and map kits caps M and K. So once you do that, it should look like mine. Import map kit, import foundation, just like it is on your sheet on number 6. Number 7, we're going to click on storyboard now. Show the assistant editor, and what we're going to do first is put in some. Before we do assistant editor, we're going to put in some information or some objects in here. So let's go here. Totally skipped number 5. If you go back to the page on number 5, it has all the objects we need to add to the storyboard. Apologize for that. Skip on your handout to number 5, which is 1 page back, which should look like this right here, where you go to add the nav bar, change the title of Rockford Crime Map, add a map kit, add a label, change the last 24 hours, add a UI slider. So it tells you exactly where to put everything. So go and do that. If you need any, basically the names for everything are as they are in the objects area. So you can use that to help you. The navigation bar is towards the bottom of the object browser. And it's the navigation bar. We're going to try again. And we can put it right underneath the batteries, fine. Do what it says there on number 5. And I'll come around and see how you're doing. And UI sliders just called slider in the objects. We didn't figure that out. And I don't expect perfection here. We're just going through practice around here, so just make sure it's we'll just make sure it's functional, and that's about it for today. You can spend a lot of time on layout and everything, but we're not going to do that today. When you rename the text of the label, you will need to stretch it out to fit once you do that. Once you're done adding your stuff, it should look like mine on the overhead. So I got my title, got view of map kit, label, slider, and we're just kind of making it fit in there. Click on that for me. Oh, you got two of them in there, looks like. Yeah, so one of them. Click and delete it. Let's click and delete it. Double click on title, and then just type in Rocket Prime now. Doing good, everybody. One of the things you can do, I'll show you in the overhead in just a second. I do it. See if you can remember how to do the auto layout thing. Remember how to do that? See if you can remember how to do that. If not, I'll open it in just a second and show you. And it's in, just a tip, it's in the editor item or the editor menu. And you do have to have a view controller selected. The yellow icon needs to be selected with the background. Make sure your map kit view takes up the entire width, all the way down to right above the label for the last 24 hours. Once you have everything in place roughly, you can then click on the yellow view controller and then go to the editor menu and do the auto resizing. Make sure you click on the yellow icon first before you try the auto resizing. The yellow icon, make sure the blue is selected in the background, then do the auto layout. I have you do that at the end, but I just thought we'd do it now too, just to help you remember to do that. How's everybody doing? Doing okay? Are we ready to go on? Okay. We did number 6 where we did the import statements, right? Number 7, here's where you're going to create your outlets and actions. So follow the directions. I won't go through them one by one, just do the reading there. On number 7, which has you put in looks like the date slider gives you the name for that, or the navigator bar, you don't have to worry about that. The map kit's called map view. The label's called LBL crime range. And the action events are date slider. The name is date slider, and it's the UI slider. And we're going to do 2 action events for that one. We're going to drag that in twice, actually. One's is called date slider with the UI slider type, and then date slider up, UI slider event on that one is touch up inside. The first one just value changed. And I have some notes at the bottom too on what you have to do with the slider for min and max values. So I'll let you do that, and then I'll walk around and help you as needed. Make sure when you follow the steps, you click on the Show Assistant Editor before you start doing anything. And give yourself some space like we did earlier for the web browser to put in all the unique objects we're going to be bringing in. The map kit label and slider are the only 3 objects you need to be concerned with. The map kit is a UI, is an outlet, by the way. Labels an outlet, and there's the slider is drug in there twice. And make sure your spelling is just like I gave you, because some of the code we'll be bringing in, it will use that naming convention for the code. And the label, by the way, is also an outlet as well. On the first slider instance, make sure, just like the button earlier, for the type, make sure you do select UI slider like it says on the handout. It might be one you might miss, because I think by default it's like any or something like that. On the slider values, on the screenshot, it says minimum value 1, maximum value 30. Current value, on the new version of Swift, it looks like it doesn't say current value anymore, it just says value, but it's 1. You don't have a lot of steps left yet, by the way, so that helps me. Main thing again today is getting these binding objects correct. And for time's sake, once we get all the binding correct, we're basically going to be copying and pasting code to get it in here to work functional. We'll go over the code, what it does, but you won't have to type the code in for time's sake. We don't have to do that. I did on the printouts, by the way, I did give you a printout of all the code that we will be using and what it's doing, what the function of that code is as well. How many is almost done binding? Or how many is done binding, I guess? How many is done binding your objects? Okay. Give it a few more minutes here to finish that up. If you need help, let me know for sure. If you have any questions, or you can ask your neighbor if they're finished. Don't mind helping each other for sure. After we get through binding the objects here, we're going to create a new class for the crime map that'll load in there. It'll be used actually for the JSON file to render the data from the JSON URL. How many still working on the object binding? Okay. Do what now? What do you want? Slider? Okay. You see where it says outlet? You got to change it to action. And those are two actions. From any to US slider. And the first one is the value changed. The second one is a touch up inside or something. What's the first one? Yeah. Just leave it down. And then rewind it. Should change it to action first. Change it to action. Change it from any to the UI slider. And this value change to the good. We'll need to make sure there's not duplicates. And, so do me a favor. Click on the one. Let's go right here. Let's make sure yeah, there it is. So you got two data sliders in there. I would say top one, that one, that down. All right. Good. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. Go back to the, make sure you're, go to the system editor, which is this icon here, remember? That one right there. I'm hovering on the overhead. What we're going to do here on number 8 is add a new class. So to the left of your Xcode, I want you to click on the Crime Map 2 folder. Crime Map 2 folder on your steps says Crime Map, but we named it Crime Map 2. Control click on the Crime Map 2 folder and go to New File. And you have a whole bunch of stuff to select from. We're going to be selecting in this one the class, Cocoa Touch class. Actually, I don't want Cocoa Touch class. I want just Swift file. Swift file next. Nope, back. Cocoa Touch class is right. Next. Yep, I was wrong. So control, click new file, Cocoa Touch class, I was right first. Next, and then for the class name, it's Crime Map. And it should be by default, the first one's NS object. That's what we're going to leave it at, is NS object. And make sure the language is Swift, not Objective-C, and then click next. And then click create. And it should have a file that looks like this. It shows up with your name or whatever the class name it puts on there. And import statement and a class object. Next on number 9, we're going to add code. Here's where we're going to actually use your native app that's already on your Xcode. If you go to the window menu and go to Crime Map, the original ad you guys download, we're going to go to the viewcontroller.swift, and there's a whole bunch of code in here. And what you're going to do after today is line by line, you'll go numbers 1 all the way through, what is it, number 5, and follow the directions on each section. But today, to save time, what we're going to do is, as long as you named everything like you're supposed to have named it earlier, we should be good to go as far as copying and pasting this entire page into the view controller that we have right now. Okay, so what you want to do is put your cursor anywhere in this page here and do a Command A, Command C. We'll copy everything. Go to window menu again, Crime Map 2, viewcontroller.swift, put your cursor in there, Command A, Command V, as in Valentine. If you do get errors, you can correct those. And you'll probably get a data points error because we've not added the data points class in here yet. as of yet. Okay. Yes. You want to know? Go climb that, and then expand on the left side. You need to stop that. The app's expand it, and then go to view control. Expand that one. Yep. Expand. Yep. And view controller. And that's the code you want to copy. Command A, Command C. Okay, now go back to crime map, and we're going to go to the data points.swift and copy all the contents of that. Command A, Command C, go back to crime map 2, and I named mine crime map. It should have been named data points, but you guys probably named yours right. I named mine wrong. But that's okay. If I paste this in here, it'll correct it. It'll call it data points and then get rid of that error I had in there. So those are the two files I had to change or update, basically, my code. Now, if I go into each one of my codes now, the view controller and the data points.swift, I shouldn't have any errors because I just copy and pasted code from the working copy. As long as I named everything right on the objects, I should be fine. So to test this, to make sure it works, what you're going to have to do is, again, I would one last time go to the main storyboard and do an auto layout, resolve auto layout just one last time, just to make sure. And before we do that, we need to also, like we did earlier in the web browser, there's a notification thing we have to update in the info list for the map. So if you guys will go to the window crime map and control click on the info.p list, I'm going to open up that source control and scroll down, and we're going to copy this from NS Transport Security down to the string line. So from there to here, from the key NS app Transport Security down to string, this information is required. All those lines of code need to be copied and brought over to the new app and placed at the bottom of that info.p list. Then we should be able to run and test it. And I will come around and help after we get through loading mine here. And you're pasting it, by the way, right above the DICT file. And a piece of guys here. Come on in here. You can bring it up to the front table here, be fine. Thank you. Need to sign anything, or we're good?
That top copy is from yours. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you too.
Thank you.
Some of the objects are not going to be used in this in-class version because I don't have it. We did not add the objects to it, like the list button isn't being used, the me dot button's not being used. But at least be able to load it, and the map should load initially, and be able to use the slider to see the crime within that default longitude, latitude range. Moment of truth here. Okay, down there. Let's see here. When it's first runs, it's going to come to this one. I know why. I did not have us create the object for navigation bar. Did I have that in the code? Did I not put that in the handout? I had it on number 7, and I didn't do mine. You guys probably did yours. Okay. All right, so let me go back. If you didn't do the navigation bar like I didn't do, it'll error out because it has to have binding on that. So I'm going to go back to my delegate or my show assistant editor and bind that. It's called navigator bar. And the code's already there for navigator bar. Just got to drag it in, I think, and bind it. So it should be up here at the top. There it is. Oh, it's right there. So navigation bar. Looks like label. Oh, label count I did use for you guys. We didn't use that. Okay. All right, so let's try it now. Yeah, because the navigation bar is used for setting up the colors, I think. The default colors, I think, is what I used that one for. I did not do that one. You guys might have done that one. That was supposed to be an outlet creation. There we go. Get rid of the. Okay, label count. That one's airing out. We didn't have that one in. And the label count is actually right here. Is where the label needs to go for label count. because this is an updated one that I did. So if I put a label here and go to my assistant editor, the variable for label count's already there, everybody. There it is right there. And just click and drag it. Control click, drag it. Made mine about that width, I guess is fine. Doesn't have to be perfect for right now. And you don't have to rename the label to anything. You just put label in there. Just leave it whatever the name is. But the code's already there, by the way. So just like I told you earlier, you can control click, drag it to that line of code for label count, and it'll bind it for you. All right. Then I'm going to do an editor, resolve auto layout issues again. Then we should be good. All right, so that's what it was. So let me go over what changes I had to make here from Word document, since I've added a few bells and whistles to it from what the instructions had. I had to bind the navigator bar to the navigation bar like it said on page 7. I didn't do that initially. Secondly, I did not have a label in there for count, which the count label is being updated for the count. So I just threw a label in there and bound it to, control drug it to the label count to bind it. And then that was the two things I had to do. And then once I did those two things, I was good to go. So let me come around each one of you, see how you're doing, and I'll help you fix it if there's errors or something. No big deal. Yep, label count same I just went over. So you go to your folder there, go to main storyboard, and let's drag. Okay, good. Control click and drag to the label. Yeah, that's the one. Put that in there. So I get two. Now control click drag it again. Just make sure you put no. Control click drag it. So, good. Now control click drag your navigation bar to that ID outlet there. Yep, and release it. Yep. Not the comment, yeah, the navigation. Yep, release it. Right, cool. All the label. I go here. That one was just the label. Oh. This one here. Okay. So go ahead and put it back in. So if you go back to the other one. So, yep. And go to the window of control switch. And go up to find that label. So LBL. That one, copy that one. Yep. Now do the binding. Control drag to that. Yep. Okay, you probably have multiple elements. Click on the stop, go back to your storyboard, click on the yellow, you control it, go to the right arrow, and so you're going to do so very right. Oh, very right. Yep. So you're going to be doing names. Yeah, to do the same. Scroll down to the here, and then arrow, and all the way up to the top. So keep on down. Unrecognized selector, date slider. It's unrecognized selector sent to so it's a click on your date slider. You have to touch it inside, change. Go to your code for me. We'll open it later. Okay. Both of these are going to be today. So which one it is? Now, control click drag on both buttons. Hover over. You control click and click on the plus line. Release it. I'll do the same on the next one. There we go. That should be. Yep. So, yeah. Awesome. I hope you guys get your lucky bars, so don't worry about it. That's right. Well, all right, so what are yours? What's going on now? Oh, don't worry about that. We're just going on the function. Okay, so you start the comments. Okay. All right, all right. Here. Sweet. See it? How we here, guys? Not working on that. Oh, yeah. 25 times ago?
I didn't start second meeting.
Okay, no, that's fine. Let's make sure here, though, we have binding objects.
Try to find this one.
Yeah. Let me show you real quick. This one. You can see. Okay. See. So what we're doing is we'll go here. All the binding objects are at the top. We'll make sure that all these are unchecked for now. Just to make sure it's good. So, so here, just to make sure. We're doing the control key. So, what have to do is the two sliders. Slider is here. So control click one and drag over to that one slider. So there you go, release it. Then do it again down here. One's for value, one's for slide up. We're going to tap those up. Good. Now click on this one just to see if there's no duplicates. You just hover over each one of them one by one to see the highlights. Good. Keep going. Good. Good. On the bottom there on the sliders. Good, good. All right. Go back to the main.storyboard. Right there. On that icon. Go back to the, and then let's do an editor all the way out there. Yep, control click. Control click it. Open as. And source control. Good. And then go back to window. And go to Prime Map. And then yep. Got it. You're going to highlight. So you're going to highlight the key. It's already there. Highlight. Down the string. All those lines of code. Yep. One's for security and then one's for the rights for location. Back down to Prime Map 2. You're going to paste it right above the end dict tag, the LCT. Go. And go back to main.storyboard. Have you already done the auto thing for the rendering? Let's do it one more time. Down to all the way on the shoes. Good. Now let's do Command R. Okay, if you've got your map running, go ahead and grab some pizzas up here at the front. I got the plates and napkins. While we're still rendering and playing with this, the main reason for this today is one of the reasons is not only to see how maps work, but also outlets and actions is a big one. Because if you get out actions and outlets down as far as how they work, why they work, that's a big step in development. Because that's where a lot of stuff gets messed up initially. The coding part in map kits, I'll go over real quickly while some are still rendering yours, is let me quickly start with like the view controller. All right, the view controller, start at the very top. I try to organize it to where it's easier to understand because this is generally how you want to do it. Like number one, I have importing all your import statements is generally the first step, like we did. Number two is importing the delegates. We have a map kit delegate, a map view delegate, and a location delegate. And remember the delegates from an open discussion get all the parts and pieces for those methods to be used in your app. If we don't have those in there, by the way, we can't do anything with the maps and nothing with location. Next in your code, logically, is going to be your variables. I have a few variables here. This variable here is just a simple count variable that is nulled out initially for the map count of annotations. Data points, this one actually comes from the class I had you create that we looked at. This class, crime map, or it's actually supposed to be called data points, which you guys probably did. I named mine crime map, should have been data points. This one here actually brings in that JSON file. It doesn't bring it in. It takes the data in, massages it, and kicks it back out. Okay. So here's what's happening here. You'll notice title, location name, district, and coordinate. Remember those issues and those JSON things we went over in the data? I'm fleshing it out here to the field names. I initialize the field names here, just initialize them as data types. Then this class is what does a lot of the work. This from data array, data dictionary, NS dictionary data points. It gets the longitude and latitude, gets the date and time, nulls them out and validates them. Here is where it actually grabs the data and begins to plug it in from the JSON, gets the district information, the title information from the JSON, the subtitle information, which is, by the way, the crime type and number and type is the subtitle. And then location is location, longitude, latitude. And then finally, it returns that for each one of those JSON sections, it returns it. So that's what this function does. Going back to the view controller, the crime data is just crime, or crime date is actually when you do the slider, one of the things the slider does is it changes the date, or it changes the value from member 1 to max 30. And what I do is I take that value 1 to 30 and just go one or more back from today's date. Keep going back. So today's the 20th, 1 would be 19, and 18, 17, so on and so forth, all the way to 30. Current value is the current value of the slider as it's moving. Start location, that's the area of Rockford I told you about if you drive down Spring Creek. And I took Google Maps to figure out where it was exactly, which is mainly the center point of all activity of crime, because that's where it starts at anyway, it looked like to me visually. And so that's what that longitude latitude is. Timer on this one here, this game timer, we are not using for this one. STR crime type is basically the crime type. These you guys did together. You did the objects, LBL count, navigation bar, map view, LBL crime range. The button we didn't use, the BTME button, BTN list we're not using, even though the code's there for it. Okay, let's talk about the sliders. Here's how it works. On the slider, when you tap the slider and move it like this, right? You don't lift your finger. It's this section here. Okay, it is called the value section. All it does is increment or decrement the value, 1 to 30. That's it. That's all it does. So it says here, if current value is equal to 1, it's going to kick out current value days until now. Else, or day until now, meaning 1 day until now will be 1. Else, more than 1, days until now. On the up part, it does a little bit more than just tell you the value on the slider label. Because all this is doing here is kicking it out to the LBL crime label, which is right here. That's all that's doing, that function is doing is that right there. When you tap up, all right, remember the inside up, I believe, was this action. This one determines how far to go back in the JSON date. So it gets the value. Here's today's date. It removes all annotations on this line. So if there's annotations, removes them all from prior slides. Takes I variable and makes it 1. So while I is less than or equal to, while 1, is less than or equal to that, it's going to keep initializing it and keep moving it. And so what it does here is if it's say 10, let's say the slider's 10, this days to add would be 10. And on this line right here is where it calculates the date. So let me find the days to add. Here it is, negative days to add, meaning from today's date, negative 10, meaning 10 days ago to now, will be the calculated date. All right. Next, I format it, the next 2 lines, to be YYYYY-MM-DD, which is 4-letter for year, 2 month, 2 day. Then I take it and put it into a value called new dates. This is a global variable at the top that we looked at, crime date, new dates. Remove all crime types that might be in there. Then here's the function load data from SOTO API. Let me show you that one. And by the way, on code, but I'm getting ready to show you, I can control click on any function and jump to a definition, it'll take me right there. So here's the meat of the JSON loading information. Okay, it gets the shared URL. I'm just printing out, as you can see on your code, this is printing out the dates down here at the bottom. That's all it's doing, printing out the dates to make sure that when I was debugging it, I left it in there. And that print statement is used for debugging. The user can't see it, you only view it in the code, okay? The next two lines of code, grab the URL. This URL here is actually what we showed in when we were doing the discussion. The date is going to be whatever date selected that the slider uses. Then this section of code here is going to break apart that JSON line by line and do a for loop and add in as many items that are in that JSON into the title of a point, of an annotation point, subtitle of a point, the crime, and then finally add it to a pinpoint on the map in that red dot. If there's an error, it'll say in a print, only for the developer will see this, response status error, whatever it might be. I did add in here an extension for MapKit that they just literally came out with in Swift. What this allows us to do is kick back a count for all visible annotations. And I use that actually in this label here that we just recently added today, that count one I didn't have in there for your instructions. That one there, which is LBL count, is in a function in and of itself. Go back to the very top here. LBL count is going to be in here. In fact, let me do a search of that. Okay, so it's a function called update count. An update count, I've got it in right there. And what all it's doing basically is looking at the visible map pins and showing what that count is all it's doing on that one. All right, and that's actually going to be in the game timer is the last one that is basically a timer. Both of them, this one here runs once. That's it. When the app runs, it does a center of map that does that global 5,000 from the loop. This one here runs over and over again for an updated count. It continually runs every 0.5 milliseconds to see what the count is of the annotations on the map. And so finally, when it runs, it's going to get that first 5,000 meter view, zoom in, and if it's on your device, you can actually view it from that location you're at. On a simulator, the Me button will just go back to probably San Francisco initially. But you can change that. I'll show you what I'm talking about. You can change that on the simulator, which is the last thing I'll show you here, as far as on the demo here. So when a simulator runs for the map, I hard code in the geolocation for the initial load, but the Me button's not going to work anyway on the dev side. But what you can do to change the simulator is go over to hardware and debug location, and I can change it to, Apple has some built-in ones. Right now I have it set to custom, which is a custom location, but it can do like say, an city or freeway driving, and it would be in actual San Francisco. But I don't have that feature turned on, so it's not going to do anything. But if the Me button was functional in here, it would do that. So I'm going to switch to the one that is functional on the Me button to show you the simulated drive of what I'm talking about. We can actually see the dot moving in a simulation. on the developer mode. So you're not going to be able to, you can simulate movement with Apple's preset, and I think it's near Cupertino and San Francisco, and they have some drive maps there that show you some simulated drive maps. Where you can see the dot moving on the map. So I'll show you here on this one. So when it loads initially, this is hard-coded location for longitude, latitude. Zooms in to 5,000 meters out. Then this me, by default right now, is going to go to wherever, San Francisco, it's Cupertino section. But notice here, it is moving because I changed it earlier. It still remembers it. So as you can see, it's using the freeway drive. But let's do like, I don't know, city run. Change that and do me. And now it's going to go to an internal residential area, and you're doing the simulated view of movement on the map using only simulator. So you can test the map movements with the simulator, but as far as local area stuff, you have to put on an actual device. Make sense? So I'll go back to freeway run, and then go back to me, which is going to be a little faster. Now here's one cool thing too. I have the traffic turned on, and the traffic turned on. What it's going to do is you can see these yellow dots are congestion, or orange dots are congestion. So congestion here. The closer the dots are together, the less congestion they are. So that's what that means, these yellow dots. And again, being, depending on the time of day. And if it really blurts out or gets bigger, it just means it's heavier congestion. And so all these little orange dots just show congestion, and that's what that means. And it's actually a checkbox on the map itself that it's no coding. It's right here where it says traffic. Traffic, points of interest also are a new feature they've added. Those two are brand new. Everything else has been there for a while. But traffic helps because, again, it shows you congestion going up. There's an app I like to use called WAZ. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, W-A-Z. It's a cool navigational app. And so from today's lesson, then, what you should have learned is basically binding objects, the importance of that, mapping capabilities. And what I want to have you do for your homework is basically this, for time's sake today. I'm going to have you do a GitHub repo for the first time. So let's quickly do that. I'm going to show you how to submit what you did today in class to your GitHub. Whether it's all the way finished or not, doesn't matter. It's going to be a good exercise on submitting code to GitHub. So do this for me. Whatever you're at next code, go ahead and exit out of it right now so we can submit this to your GitHub account. And then we will talk about your take home and be done. All right, so I'm getting out of Xcode altogether. And what you want to do is on your Mac, you want to position your windows to where GitHub is on the left side of your window on your Mac. And then click on the Finder and go to your Documents area. And you should see that Crime Map 2 folder that we created when we created that Crime Map 2 project. And if you have timed out of GitHub, you might have to log back in, but mine's still on, so hopefully your guys' is too. You'll just click and drag that Crime Map 2 folder into right here where my mouse is on the overhead in your GitHub area. And when you do, it'll prompt and say this folder is not a repository. And that's when you'll do create an add is what you'll do, create an add. And you'll see a whole bunch of green show up because it's brand new to your repo. Mine says 12 uncommitted changes. Yours might say more or less. And all we're going to do is, on the summary, I want you to type in there crime map. Let's type in there my crime map, so a little bit more personal to you. My crime map. And commit to master. And you should see a publish button. Do you guys see a publish button on yours on the upper right corner? Go ahead and click on that. And we're going to leave everything as it is here. Mine says crime map 2. My account's selected. And now I'm going to hit publish repository. If it says fail, we'll try again. Now mine, does your guys say fail or does it go? All right, it might just be mine. Mine been timed out. There we go. I think I might have submitted one earlier. So here's what I always do. Even after it's finished in GitHub, I always do a repository menu push. Repository menu push. And then after that sync thing finishes, go repository view on GitHub. And then it should take you to your GitHub page in Safari by default, I think, which is fine. You don't need to be logged in for this one in Safari. But that URL it gives you at the very top, that's what you need to submit for today's in-class exercise. Again, whatever area it's at, doesn't have to be complete, okay? I'm just seeing that you know how to submit to GitHub with this, that you submitted whatever you have completed today as is into your GitHub repo. Because from here on out, week 3 and week 4, you'll be submitting, or even this week, week 2 assignment, you'll be submitting in GitHub just like this. So that URL that you copy there, you're going to go into week 2 in class and submit that as your assignment for week 2 in class. So we're going to do that. And it should give you the opportunity to submit a URL, I believe, in there. So let me know if you don't have that option, but you should. In week 2 in class, you should have the option to submit it. Is that correct? For week 2 tutorial, or no? Submit to GitHub, oh no, it doesn't have that option. It just says submit to GitHub, good, you're fine. So I do not have a place for you to submit the in-class. But you do have it on your GitHub, right? And you did submit it there. It says for your assignment, what you're going to do is I've got a podcast already here that goes through the entire project from start to finish. Go through it, do what we just did in class, but slower, going over the code line by line again. I also have steps here to add your own icon. Follow that as well. I also have steps if you forgot how to fork and clone. I have steps how to do that, which today is your first time doing it, so you probably don't remember it. It's not second nature yet. Also steps how to create a brand new project on that link shows you how to do that. But I use a program called Pixlr.com. It's an online Photoshop, really. It's really cool. I use it in my photography class, and it's great, a great way to create and edit photos. Then there's a local or a global development company that allows you to create icons, and it's for marketing purposes. But all you do is submit a 1024 by 1024 image to this little toaster, okay? You dump it into the toaster, and it spits out all of the needed icons for an iOS app. And it ends up looking, I'll show you how many files you get when you're done. It ends up looking basically like about 30 to 50 icons it creates for all the icons needed for an iOS app. So let me show you a finished one here, what it looks like. So when you get through, it'll send you a zip file basically in an email. And in that zip file will be one of the folders, and I have this in your steps for this week, take home. One of the folders on Xcode is app icon source. And it creates all of these app icons for you once you submit that 1024 by 1024. And then what that does is gives the ability to add the app icon onto the phone, and you can use it for the splash screen and whatever else you want to use it for. So anyway, it does all of that for you. And notice it gives all the sizes for all the different types of devices, from iPad Pro down to the iPhone, and even the Spotlight's searching capability. So avail yourself to that. It's totally free to use. They also have some cool apps in there too you might look at that they've created. I recommend using. Any of their stuff is really good. And I walk you through exactly how to do the app icon right here. So do that. And this is due again next Saturday, midnight, as always. You will submit your GitHub URL to that. Now here's the catch. If you want to just build upon your in-class you've worked on, that's fine. But I do recommend as a challenge to you to do it all over again, because it's not going to take that long, actually. I would say from start to finish with the video and your handouts here, about an hour and a half, 2 hours completion from start to finish. And that's doing it really slow, okay? If you go faster, then you probably get done quicker than that. And now that you've went through the binding a couple times, hopefully that will go a little quicker for you. That makes sense? And so 100 points for the app. If you have an iOS device and you've not submitted to me your UDID, I do need that so you can play apps from our iOS course. So here's the steps of how to do it. Follow the steps on your iOS device. And what it'll do is allow you to install apps on your device from our class. And so I did post last week in week one apps. These are actually all the apps with your guys' little icons you created, little characters to shooters. So you can literally, if I have your UDID, which I have 2 or 3 of yours already, you can just click on these links from your device. I have a UDID of, and it'll install it onto your phone or iPad. Okay, any questions? Next week, no class. I'll be in St. Louis. I will have a video for the session posted by next Friday. I did bring 3 iPads, and I had a count of, I thought, 2, possibly 3. That's why I brought 3. So if you don't have an iOS device, definitely take one of these with you. I'll just get your name from you, and that's it. At the end of the session, end of the 4 weeks, you'll just return it back. But that way you'll be able to load apps. So if that's you, when you come up to get pizza, just tell me that you're going to take one. I'll have you write your name down, take it back to your desk. The only care on these is when you're cleaning the screen is basically just a damp cloth is all I recommend, and then just charging it up. And there's no password on any of these. There's no passcode you have to remember. And these are already, the UDIDs of these are already added into our account to where you can install any apps that we do in here. And I think that's about it. Any questions? So pizza's up here. Go ahead and help yourself. And if you need an iPad, definitely come up and let me know, and I'll give you one to take home. You guys are great. Come on up and dig in. Got pepperoni pan, pepperoni sausage pan, and then cheese pan. They actually have fancy plates this week too. Help yourself. I can't take any home.